This episode of Imperfect Strike was recorded early August 2025 and highlights the organization Refuse Fascism. However, the events discussed have already passed. Refuse Fascism has a new call to action, welcoming every individual and organization that cares for the future to get to DC on November 5th. Go to refusefascism.org and find out more information. And now, into the episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Imperfect Strike. I am your host, Alice, and I have with me Lucha from Refuse Fascism DMV, or is it DC?
It's
Sorry.
Refuse Fascism DMV. That's right. Yep.
Okay. From Refuse Fascism DMV. And thank you so much for being here, Lucha.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm really glad to be talking with you and with your audience.
Amazing. This is a crazy week for the DMV in particular. We woke up, was it yesterday morning or the day before? My trauma brain can't even handle dates anymore. To troops on the ground. We woke up to the National Guard taking over DC. And I guess I just want to check in and ask how you're doing, first of all. How are you feeling right now?
Oh, I'm mainly I'm furious. I'm thinking a lot about um the kind of massive response that's needed to this. It's and I'm thinking a lot about the what it signifies in terms of a leap in the consolidation of a fascist America and the need to derail that right now.
Yes, yeah, it's pretty overwhelming, to be honest. Um, it's making me feel tired. I always feel tired. I feel tired this whole year. Do you feel that too?
No, I guess I mean, I get tired sometimes, but mainly I feel very impatient and I feel very angry.
Yes.
Um and uh and those are the main things I'm feeling and kind of feeling like whatever, I'm willing whatever tiredness goes along with being able to fight this, I'm ready for.
Hmm.
Because we've got a fight on our hands and we got to win it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, tell me a little bit about Refuse Fascism. I don't even know who founded it, when it was founded, how long it's been around, anything like that.
Okay. Well, Refuse Fascism was founded in 2016. And it was founded, it was founded right after Trump got elected the first time or
Okay.
got put in the first time. I don't know if you could legitimately call that elected in. Um, and it was with the recognition at that point that this was fascist and that it was a fascist program, that what was he was going to try to do was install fascism at that point. And so that's what that was it was initiated by Sansara Taylor and Andy Z, who are revolutionary communists of the new communism, followers of Baba Avakian, them together reaching out to a wide array of people of different viewpoints, different political perspectives. Dr. Cornel West was, I think, maybe one of the first people who joined with them to initiate Refuse Fascism.
Oh, wow.
um, there was a very wide array of people that took up the call at that time, and the unifying message of Refuse Fascism was then and is now, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America, and our second kind of unifying slogan in this period that has been for months now is Trump must go, and not just must go, but must go now. And so anybody who agrees with those two statements and demands is welcome in Refuse Fascism, and a lot of different kinds of people are part of it,
Hmm.
and we are determined to fight through on that with the strategy of bringing forward mass nonviolent protest and resistance, um, to be to the scale where millions and millions of people start coming into the streets day after day, where throughout society and different institutions, the fascist orders can't be carried out, where we actually like make that demand real. Trump must go now
Right.
and get it removed from power.
Right. We can't afford to wait on any account. So it seems like Refuse Fascism, much like General Strike, is a decentralized organization, right? There may sort of be a few people running some sort of main account or chapter, but it's mostly done by state or city. Is that correct?
No, we have a national editorial board
Oh, okay.
that does give direction to the whole movement throughout the country. And then we have like chapters in different cities and different areas that take a lot of initiative and take a lot of responsibility and with a lot of creativity and a lot of latitude to work on this in different ways, but with kind of a unified political orientation and leadership from our national editorial board.
I see. Okay. So there is some sort of more centralized apparatus going on.
Yeah, yeah, we have a national office. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk. I mean, I'm super excited to get into the weeds with you and talk strategy. I feel like I haven't gotten to get into that really with so many of my podcast guests so far. And I mean, with this escalation that we're seeing this week, I really just want to, drill down and ask how, like, well, first of all, where we think this is all headed, because I think a lot of us would agree we're already in fascism, but in terms of will there be elections next year or how much of our normal is disappearing, how quickly. So, where are we headed and how can we sort of steal these people who are kind of still on the outskirts of activism and sort of lead them from more performative activism into what really needs to be done? Sorry, that was kind of like three questions all at once. Um, but let's kind of start with what has your organization been focused on this week? What are sort of marching orders that are being put out? What are actions that people are floating?
Well, you know, we recognized, as soon as Trump started tweeting out or on his social media about, with all this talk about crime in DC and he's going to make it safe and the local youths and gang members have to be able to be put away for a long time and all of this stuff. And then, and started calling in federal forces that, this was an escalation and going somewhere really bad. And when he made the announcement yesterday that he was going to federalize the Metropolitan Police Department and deploy the National Guard and put the FBI on the ground. This I think everybody has to kind of confront is a it's a fascist takeover of DC, and that's not just something that affects the people of DC. This is the capital. This is part of an actual leap towards the consolidation of fascism in the country as a whole.
Hmm.
And for people who say, well, we're already in fascism, we are not, there's not yet the consolidation of a fascist America, but there is a fascist regime in power. And that's different than what came before Trump. That's for all of the things about this country that has a lot of oppression running through it.
Hmm.
When you have a genocidal racist come to power in the White House with a program to openly install that kind of vision of society, and where all the checks, all the rules, all the constitutional rights, all the court checks, all of that gets thrown out the window,
Hmm.
and he's saying this is now whatever the law is, whatever he says it is, um, and tells the police to, they can do whatever the hell they want, and sends ICE agents out to terrorize immigrants openly in public and flout court orders and all of this. That is fascism. That is a leap. And the ways people have already suffered in a lot of ways in this country, that is, that this is something that is a major whole other level of horror. and not just for people here, but for people all over the world, because fascism is on the rise around the world, and the U.S. is the most powerful country in the world still. Um, and this is very, very dangerous.
Hmm.
Um, and it is moving very quickly. And and part of what you can see in the difference of it too is the fact that they've already put Democratic lawmakers in handcuffs in different cities and are threatening that on a whole other scale and want to take away citizenship from anybody who disagrees with them.
Yeah.
Um, this is fascism. And the point that we're at now is this has been gaining in strength and, and an ability to just, to run over everything and everybody. And the takeover of DC is it's very, very dangerous and very ominous, because it is a step and a leap towards locking down the whole country. So that's maybe a long answer just to kind of the what the fascism is. And so what we've done, this week is we have, we've responded in different ways to this. We did a car caravan a few days ago on the weekend where we invited people to come out with us through different neighborhoods in DC, and people decorated the cars and said no fascist takeover of DC. And we went to the people because it's the people that are going to have to stop this. It's the people that are going to have to act.
Yeah.
Um, and we went through different neighborhoods and was very, very, very well received.
Oh,
People were
good.
very heartened by it. And we were really, we had a big loudspeaker on the car and we were struggling with people of like, okay, you have to step into this. We have to do this together, including encouraging people to use whistles as a way to make noise, disrupt business as usual, but also when people see ICE agents kidnapping people off the street, you blow a whistle, you let your neighbors know, and you tell people, come towards the whistle, come running, because we have to shut down the ability of them to terrorize people. And our strength is when we're together.
Oh,
Um,
that's so smart.
so
So, yeah, not telling people that if you hear the whistle, bad things are happening, stay away, but directing them to come confront with direct action.
yeah, and at least, and you think about what would it look like, if every time ICE tried to snatch somebody, not only did you have, a couple of people coming around and filming, but it started to be, dozens of people, hundreds of people. And if you start having thousands of people coming out, every time, ICE is trying to do something in a neighborhood, they literally would not be able to do it.
Right, right. Yeah, they're also human. They would be impacted. They would feel it, right? They would feel sort of that them versus 1,000 people staring them down. They would feel that loss of power.
Yeah. And they would, I mean, I've seen, I'm, you could imagine kind of like what they feel like they could get away with in a situation like that and what they versus what they can get away with when it's just, a bunch of them and like one person or a couple of people.
Hmm.
It puts a constraint on their ability to just terrorize people.
Hmm. And I'm heartened that you say the community is reacting well to these calls to action because to be honest, I have a hard time convincing people that they should give up huge stores like Amazon, Home Depot, Walmart, like actions that seem fairly easy to accomplish and would hit the regime in the money. And so it's so interesting to me that we'll have some people say I can't even change my habits enough to stop shopping every few days. And then you've got other people saying I'm willing to run towards someone else's whistle saying I might be being kidnapped. I don't know how to deal with the cognitive dissonance of that, to be honest.
Well, I guess I would temper that with saying, people responded very well to our presence and our challenge to them.
Hmm.
What that actually looks like in the real when it comes down is still to be seen.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but there's also, because it is so drastic and extreme what's happening right now, I think part of what the that's affecting people, and it's going to affect people, and people can respond to things like that in one way or another. They can, try to hide and and double down on kind of let me keep my head down.
Right.
And or they can feel like, oh my God, this is real. I actually do have to do something. Um, and and people often go back and forth between the two. So I think there's a struggle on for like what are people actually going to do with this moment? And and we are trying in every way we can to call people to act, and where that's going to take a lot of different expression. It's going to look different in different places, but they're with a vision of mass protests, but also things like in neighborhoods, people gathering together like that. We're doing noise demonstrations every Wednesday at 6 for 15 minutes in different neighborhoods, and we're calling on people to do their own wherever they are,
Hmm.
to bang pots and pans, blow whistles, come together with a couple people or a bunch of people, but where you start to build a movement where people are seeing each other. They're seeing that they're not the only ones who disagrees with this, and they're seeing like other people. When you make noise, it's funny, it's a little thing, but it's a disruption. It's a little way to start to step forward, but you're expressing your disapproval, your desire to change something. You're making it known, and then
Yeah.
people are seeing each other, and that's a way to start to build up networks of resistance. You could see how something like that starting to happen every day, and spreading all over the place in different neighborhoods, and people getting together with their own networks to do that, could can embolden people to then, when they do see something happening, be much more ready to make noise and blow a whistle and call those networks into action.
Right. Yeah,
So
I
that's,
mean,
oh,
it's
sorry,
almost
go ahead.
like the courage being contagious, but also just the action being contagious, right? If you see other people who are not just sort of going about their day and trying to pretend like things are normal when they're definitely, definitely not, you might also think, okay, it's time for me to join in on that too.
Yeah, exactly.
No thrones, no crowns, no kings. On October 18th, millions of us are rising again to show the world America has no kings and the power belongs to the people. Find a march, rally, or visibility action at nokings.org.
When I hear you talk about
And
mass marches and protests, things like that, it makes me think of that I saw online somewhere earlier this year that people were saying, the LAPD and LA, of course, has faced similar fascist escalations that we're seeing here now, that the LAPD could handle maybe one 10,000 person march, but definitely not five and definitely not spread across the city. And it makes me think, why aren't all the DC organizers coming together and saying, okay, marching is great, but it mostly does nothing. Right? Like if marching worked, then Trump wouldn't be around. He wouldn't be here. Um, which is not to say stop marching, but is just to say, how about move it? How about move it over to the highway? If you got 10 parades of thousands of people marching around 495, and you've got airport workers shutting down Reagan and Dulles, I mean, you could have DC statehood in about a week, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I think that kind of vision is the kind of vision, that we need of of a lot of different kinds of things, actually. I mean, what I think about marching is I think if it's just if marching is seen as just a way to express your outrage and then you go home, and you think kind of your real political activity is like voting,
Hmm.
then I think those kind of marches, they feel very draining because it's not a march that is growing a force. Um, I
Right.
think when marches are called and people are coming out, and although I'll say two things on this. One is I don't want to even discount the outrage marches either, because, for example, April 5th was the first day since the Trump regime came in this time that there was a massive outpouring of people protesting. It was
Okay.
called, I think, by Indivisible. Um, and that made a big difference. Like people saw each other for the first time. Like before that, everybody was kind of in mourning of like, oh, something bad happened. Trump got elected. There's nothing we can do. I guess this is what the country is like now. And like, and
Mhm.
then people came out and protested, and it changed how the people felt. And you can see that again on June 14th when it was like, I don't know how many people came out, 5 million or whatever it was across the country.
Yeah.
Um, that, that was very heartening for people to see each other like that. But if that's all, then it doesn't give people a way to where those marches are something where it's connected to how do you actually stop this, and
Mhm.
that's why kind of the strength I think of Refuse Fascism is our demand is the Trump fascist regime must go now, and we mean now, and we mean that through all of the through if through marches, through non-compliance in different ways, through strikes, through like all the different ways that people would want to act on this, like non-violently, but with determination, and refusing to go along with fascist orders and doing everything possible to shut down the ability of this regime to carry those out. I think there's
Mhm.
a lot of creative ways that people can do that. I think marching is one of them. But I think it has to be in that context because otherwise it ends up kind of feeling like, well, we've come out and expressed our outrage, but they're not listening to us. So then what? And they're not going to listen to just outrage. We actually have to be a force that's shutting it down. And this kind of thing has happened in other countries where people come out and they come back day after day. And when they
Yeah.
get repressed and they get locked up and they get, and they get force thrown at them, like the people come back stronger and like the next day or the next week, like where it's not a kind of, one and done. It's like, no, we actually mean get out and we're going to
Right.
shut down the ability of the society to function until it does get out. And that's I think what we need, and I think marches with that message and that content and that mission could be very, very, very important and very powerful. And we are actually calling a march on Saturday, this Saturday at 2 o'clock, starting at DuPont Circle, and we're going to march to the White House, and we're calling on people to come from all over the East Coast. We're calling on all the organizations to come to unite with it,
Oh,
to
wonderful.
help strengthen it. Like because this is emergency time, and people we need a united movement, and we need people acting, and if people don't want to come to it but want to do other things that day in other places, it should the point is it should be a day of resistance everywhere actually.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, when I say marching won't accomplish our end goal of getting the regime out, that doesn't necessarily mean stop all marching, right? But it's got to be marching or marching towards, right? I mean, I love the idea that if people are going to organize a march, march people towards City Hall and have them actually go in and talk to their elected representatives. Because I think very few people actually do that. We stay at home and we call and we email and we sign petitions, but we don't actually go see these people in person. And I love that you're calling on all the organizers to come together this Saturday for the emergency march because that's also just a great way to meet people who think like you and would be open to other actions, right? The marching plus, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and I think there's like, I think it's really important for any organization, any group, anybody right now who's opposed to Trump's fascist takeover, to the takeover of DC, to the military, a military occupation, like anybody who's opposed to that and and what Trump is doing, like really right now, all again, people will have different tactics, different ways, different things, but there's got to be we've got to be a unity at least on like on that this that we have to act right now to stop what he's doing,
Yeah.
and I think there will be a lot of different there is and will be a lot of different ideas about what that looks like, what that means, what all the demands are, all of that. But I think they're you know I would like to see starting to crystallize a feeling and a clarity in people's thinking very, very broadly that like in whatever ways we're going about it, the regime has to go now. And we're not asking, we're shutting this down and making it go.
Hmm.
And you know, and I think um I think that's really important. And I think, you know, a lot of times people recognize and talk about like, oh well, why don't all the organizations all come together and do the same things? And you know, look, there's differences among organizations, but there's, you know, and there's, and I will say there's been too much in the movement um of for a long time, too much divide and conquer kind of tactics, you know, too much ways in which people like kind of get proprietary about the movement and are and treat each other as kind of different entities with different brands, and you know, and are worried about people stepping on each other's toes, and like, you know, things that just like really we need to like kind of break out of right now.
For sure.
um and you know, people can have their different movements, but like, but we have a danger that we have to stop, and we have to come together, and where we disagree, those disagreements really need to be principled disagreements. They need to be in the open and not, you know, not ways in which people are, you know, spreading rumors about each other and doing things that are unprincipled. And you know,
Hmm.
and I'm going into this because it's a thing, and it's, you know, and it's going to really hurt the ability of the masses of people to fight to defeat Trump fascism if that kind of stuff kind of, you know, uh, is taking hold. And refuse fascism has been, you know, has been targeted by some of this kind of stuff. And you know,
Yeah.
where people have said, oh well, don't work with refuse fascism because they're the revcoms, and the revcoms are revolutionary communists. And actually it's two different organizations, which is very clear if you look into it at all, but a lot of people don't look into it. And then the revcoms as an organization, which I personally am also part of,
Yeah.
is a very, you know, important, principled group that, you know, that has been doing a lot of important work to go up against this whole system.
Hmm.
And you know, and that's something people should look into too. And you know, and the revcoms take up the work of Bob Avakian, who's developed a new communism. And so I always encourage people like, okay, well, if it scares you that revcoms are involved, first of all, no, a lot of people are involved with a lot of different points of view. But
Hmm.
second of all, go look into what the revcoms actually are. Go look at what Bob Avakian is actually saying. um,
Yeah, when you first said that, I was like, what's wrong with revolutionary communists? But people are
well,
so scared of that, aren't they?
yeah, people are scared of communism, and they have a knee-jerk reaction to it.
Hmm.
Um, People don't know that there's a new communism that Bob Avakian has developed. And then there's a lot of ways because of the prejudice against communism, that like when there's when there's kind of opportunistic attacks against Bob Avakian, of like people who just really don't want people to look into it, and
Hmm.
they say things like, oh, he just wants, he's, you know, because he's this leader of this group, he wants to be a dictator, he wants to be his own autocrat, he's a cult leader, like, you know, these kinds of things that are really, you know, slanderous and unprincipled. And but because they dovetail with people's prejudices,
Yeah.
they, you know, people turn their brain off a little bit, you know, when they hear that kind of stuff. And so what I always say is, well, if you want to know what Bob Avakian is actually about, then go read his, you know, go, his work is very accessible. You know, we have a
Yeah.
website, revcom.us. You know, he has a social media platform at Bob Avakian Official. Like anybody can go look into what he's actually saying and doing. And when you do, even just a little bit, it actually is very apparent that this is, his work is like the complete opposite of something that's authoritarian.
Hmm.
um and you know, and so that's why I always, you know, I always recommend like people should go look at it. And you don't have to look into it to be part of refuse fascism. You don't have to agree with it at all to be part of refuse fascism. um and I'll echo one of the founders of refuse fascism, Sansara Taylor, when she said, you don't have to look into it to be part of this, but if you're going to have an opinion about it, then look into it before you make your opinion.
I like that. Yeah. Please come informed at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. To be honest, I have not even heard of Mr. Bob Avakian. Is that how you say his last name?
Avakian. Hmm.
Okay, yeah, but I will definitely look into him. That's very interesting.
Hi, Alice here with your first episode break. Have you heard of water? It probably makes up at least 50% of your body. We're not scientists and we didn't look it up. Anyway, try having a glass when you feel like your nervous system is about to explode. A glass of water and 2 deep breaths will not stop the fascism, but it might help you get to tomorrow. Also, try jumping in an ocean or entering a rage room and smashing some people's things. Thank you, and back to the episode.
Okay, so nonviolent mass movement and protest. We are open to strikes if we are part of Refuse Fascism, which is great. Love to hear that.
Mhm.
Um, so what strategies other than disrupting and noise and not even necessarily coming from your organization, but when you just think about how are we going to stop this system and bring it to a halt, what sort of things do you think will be most effective?
I think I think like I said, I think it's actually has to be a lot of different kinds of things. Like you could imagine like, okay, as the schools are coming in, right, like very soon.
Hmm.
And you have a huge fascist like attack on the universities. And you have a really a clampdown right now on dissent at all.
Right.
And you've had, in the universities, a lot of the way that's taken expression is basically outlawing any discussion of the genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
And anybody who dares to speak out against that is like, is criminalized, is banned, is repressed, I mean, we saw with Mahmoud Khalil, grabbed off out of his apartment, like, and then, but on the campuses themselves, all these capitulations from some of these big universities like Columbia, where they're turning over their Middle East department and their Middle East Studies department, and that means, and they're taking up the definition of anti-Semitism that the Trump regime is insisting on, of if you have any critique of the state of Israel and Zionism, then that's
Hmm.
the same thing as being against Jewish people, and it is absolutely not. It
Yeah,
is
not true.
Israel is a Jewish supremacist state, and Jewish people are Jewish people, and those are two different things.
Right.
And but this is what's now being set as the standard that these universities are supposed to agree to, and you have some of the major universities that are totally taking that up. So this is, you already have in a lot of different ways, just an attack on critical thought, an attack on dissent, and there has to be a shutting down of that. Like, the campuses should be in an uproar. I mean, there's students everywhere. I mean, now already, not even waiting for school to come back in, people should be, the students and professors should be coming into action. But you
Hmm.
could see how things like, when they're trying to shut things down in a campus and target people, that people come to their defense, that people stand up together, that people say, no, you're not going to stop us from teaching the truth about, that a genocide is being carried out in front of our eyes. You're not going to stop us from speaking out against that.
Right.
Um, so, and then like you were saying, then, and I mean, when you're talking about the freeway takeover, like, this was one of the things that people did in LA. You
Yeah.
know, at different points where, just kind of just thousands of people came out and they went and took over the freeway and stayed in the freeway all day. And like,
Hmm.
so I feel like all these different kinds of things where, where the ICE can't go anywhere and do anything because people are coming out into the streets. The, universities are like trying to, install this fascist stuff, and all the students are in an uproar. The hospitals are being told they can't give women the care they need, or trans people the care they need, and they're saying we're going to do it anyway, take us to jail, and then more people are coming to defend them.
Right.
That I feel like in all those different ways. And then, I think strikes are very appropriate. I think, and marches, and mass protests, and maybe you get to a point where people are coming to DC and camped out in front of the White House in their like tens of thousands,
Hmm.
and people are
Right.
standing up at the same time all over the country.
Yeah.
um you know I feel like that's the kind of vision we need, where this starts to look like a whole population in resistance day after day, that's and that's not not cowering to and bowing down to the repression. And that's a scary thing because, even right now, like they're saying, okay, we're deploying National Guard troops, we're federalizing the police, we're putting all these other federal agents on the street, and you know, and and it's only, that and Trump's already saying, like, I mean, outright, like he wants to, this is a force that he wants to use against, he's all the criminals, but part of who the criminals are is the protesters. And
Right,
any,
right.
the criminals are the black and brown youth, the criminals are the immigrants, and the criminals are the Democratic Party opposition, and anybody who dares to protest. All of that fits the
Oh,
definition of criminal
I know.
under, the Trump fascism. And so people are already afraid to speak out, but like, but that has to we have to that people have to get over their fear and be willing to risk something,
Hmm.
because if not now, there's, what is going to get locked in is going to be a whole other level of hell and horror that, there's going to be no turning back from, really.
Right.
And
We're already building
so
concentration camps.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there's not much farther we have to go, but like you said, there's still time. We have to just do it now. The urgency is part of it for sure.
yeah.
And yeah, oh God. Everyone, it's right. It's anyone they want to be a criminal is a criminal. To be honest, I need an army of blonde toddlers that I can just send out into the world and go marching because I think that might be the only people they wouldn't arrest. But that would
I
never
wouldn't
work.
be so sure, but
Yeah. Yeah, right.
but I
Um,
think that, part of the, in terms of just strategically, why this can work though, if that's how this resistance becomes,
mhm,
is because then the ability to carry out their program, actually, like, it shuts down the society. They can't do it. And there is a, you know, there are people who run this country who are not all, lockstep in behind Trump. You have
mm,
other sections of people that run this country. You have the Democratic Party, you have, whatever, different people at the top, including within the fascist coalition right now, and including among the big, business corporations, all of this. If
mhm.
there is that kind of crisis in society that the country can't function, then you're going to start to see the cracks that already exist
Right.
crack open, where
Well, and I
whole
do find
sections of this, people in power start to say, this fascist program now is getting in the way of our ability to run this society, and has to get out.
right, right. Yeah, and to be honest, I do find the Democrats to be very, very complicit for the most part. But if enough pressure is put, they don't have any choice but to come around, hopefully. Because I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
we basically need a whole system reboot at this point. It's just everything is controlled by the billionaires' money.
yeah, I mean, that would be a whole other discussion about what do you do about the whole system of capitalism, which I could have at another time.
Right, right,
Um,
right. Okay, okay. We'll have you back and we'll
but
talk about taking down capitalism.
but right now, I think anybody, whether you think capitalism needs to be taken down, whether you think we need, I know there's a number of people in Refuse Fascism who are like, no, I want my country back. I want, people have different ways in which they see where the future needs to go. But
Hmm.
whatever it is, none of us are going to be able to do anything good if fascism consolidates.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why the unifying demand is Trump must go now. And, and and that's why we want to unite with anybody from whatever perspective. If they can
Right.
agree with that, we can be on the same side right now. Um,
Right. And yeah, like you were
including,
saying earlier.
Democratic Party politicians are welcome to come into this. The Democratic Party as an institution is not going to lead the resistance. That's not how they see their interests.
Right.
But anybody within that Democratic Party that wants to come and join Refuse Fascism or come and speak at our rallies, they're welcome, they're invited, because this is a this is an alignment on defeating fascism. And
Hmm.
that has to, without doing that, then, you know, then we're not going to have a chance to go forward to anything good.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, like you were saying earlier, I mean, there's so many different organizations that feel like they have to be focusing on a certain area or they want to hold, ownership of a certain area, but we have so much more in common than we don't have in common in terms of our aims, in terms of getting the country back, being a real democracy, just oh my gosh, just basic things that we should be able to take for granted, which we can't. And now is not the time to be, quibbling over who's leading what. We just all have to get in the same room and start talking. And I was going to ask you because it seems like y'all are so on the ground, involved in DC in the city. Have you been doing any actions with Flare USA?
We've been to their encampment. We've been to some of the events that they've done. And and I think they're, they're one of the groups that's doing something important by their, they're setting a certain, um, what do you call it? Like they're igniting a certain idea by their encampment, that I
Hmm.
appreciate. And so we've definitely been, in touch with them and relating to them, and we're reaching out to a lot of organizations, um, and I think, and we really are inviting all of them, you know,
Yeah,
to 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 do some of these things jointly and together, um, like I said, this Saturday or March, this is, I think it's a very important moment to march and to come together and
mhm.
really, are very broadly extending the invitation to all the organizations to do this with us.
Right. Come meet us. Let's all get on the same page and go forward together. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of alignment there between those groups.
Hello, and welcome to another break. We're coming up to the end of our first season, and while we have focused on interviews, bringing out the human experience with different backgrounds, and highlighting organizations, we want more. If you represent a local group, chapter, or organization and want to share the work you've done, challenges you've faced, and how you've persevered, we want to hear from you. Come share your piece, and let's talk about what you think is needed to achieve a national general strike. Furthermore, we want to start episodes focused on skill sharing and topic highlighting. We want to start creating recorded workshops for people to listen to, with or without materials to include in the episode. If you are interested, please email us at hello@imperfectstrike.live. We will help you construct everything. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Okay, so let me ask you something else strategy wise. I
Sure.
feel like a lot of people are saying, let's make disruptions, whatever your activism lane is, please come find it, come help the system. But something I never hear is like let's hit the banks. I feel like I never hear people talking about let's hit the money directly. And as soon as one half of my brain will say, okay, let's get everyone marching on the highway, and, there will be too many of us, we're too powerful. And I do think that will work. The other part of my brain starts going, yeah, but that puts people in danger. And really, we could all just do some super legal things like stop working, head to the bank and close down your account, get all your money out. If everyone actually did that, they need our money. They need us more than we need them, and they would have to come around. I don't know. Do you ever feel hear people talking about that?
I mean, what I think about that is I think um, there's, I think it would be fine for people to do that, but I also think it is, um, in terms of how do you, how to create a political crisis and a mass struggle. I think that is, I think, you kind of can't really envision like huge numbers of people walking off of their jobs and taking their money out because people have to eat. people have to feed their kids, right?
Mhm.
People are up against real necessity. And
Mhm.
and I think now, in the course of fighting to defeat fascism, it may be that a lot of people leave their jobs, or, people, lose their jobs or whatever. And I don't envision being able to go through this fight without people losing their jobs and walking off of their jobs. But I think it's a, it's a different, I guess I think if people, I think that protesting the banks, taking money out of the banks could be one part of the picture. But in terms of like, how do you, right in this urgent moment, create a political crisis? You
Mhm.
would not right now be able to do it that way if that was the only thing you were doing.
Okay.
Um, because it doesn't, you can't do it on mass. And part of why you can't do it on mass is because the, the, the thinking of people, the way people act, the way people stand up, the way, and the way you actually have to confront the repression that's coming
Mhm.
after people.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the attack that happened in LA when they started rounding up immigrant people, like that wasn't in response to anything anybody did. That's the fascist program. That's what they're intending to do, and that's what they're doing really quickly.
Right.
If there's not a mass response to, and a mass opposition to to the ways in which they're actually targeting and terrorizing people and going after everything, if there's not, if there's not a mass struggle in that way,
Mhm.
then you end up with people mainly pacified, repressed. And then even if you got a small number of people to do things like quit their jobs and take the money out of the banks, that's not going to shut this down. And even if you had like a lot of people, I mean, mainly the banks are not getting their money from just like all the middle class people or something like that. Um,
That's so true. Yeah.
they're where do they get their money from? They're from the huge companies and from the big capitalists that like own everything.
Yeah.
That's mainly where the banks are getting their money from. So that's not, you know, I can see the value of things like a general strike, and I think that, yeah, again, I think that should be part of the picture. And I can see how that both has economic impact and political impact. Uh, but I think the economic impacts would not it would not be able to be done on a large enough scale in a way that could actually like have a huge economic impact on the whole society that would drive out this regime,
Mhm.
um, without without being combined with a massive political upheaval.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not talking about the banks, moving away from that, but just going to general strike. My thinking is general strike is the only thing that can accomplish that at this point. And what, you see when I say that to people, a lot of the time I'll get the reaction of, okay, you could do a general strike, but of course nothing will change. And then it's just about educating them. No, no, like that things do actually change. Strike actually works. It's just it has to be a certain amount of people and it has to be sustained. And it's already worked in this country. We had that government shutdown. Do you remember, was this 2018 or something like that? The government shut down for a couple months and it wasn't even a real threat, or sorry, it wasn't even a real strike. It was the threat of TSA workers finally going on strike because they were sick of not getting paid that brought the government back. That's why they got restarted. So when we're thinking strategy, I mean, we have so much power in refusing labor. And I mean, I think we can march, we can protest, we can hopefully vote. Hopefully there will be elections again, but we can't bank on any of those things to get us out of this. It's only when you disrupt their money flow enough that they actually come back to the table. What are your thoughts on that?
I would love to see those kind of strikes happening. And I think, I think I would love to see those strikes happening like now.
Yeah.
And and becoming a growing thing, like where more and more people are doing it in different sectors, and and where things are being shut down in that way. I think people have to, you made the point earlier when I was talking about when we were going out to different neighborhoods and stuff, you were making the point about people needing to see a model of people standing up, of acting, or can't remember how you put it, but something like that, of
Yeah.
like where you're not just seeing, where all you see is the terrible that's happening. You're also seeing, oh, there's a way to act on it. There's a way to stand up on this, and people are doing that, and and you're seeing a model of that. I think that's what needs to happen now. Like, I think there's not, there's not going to be a general strike that happens by just kind of like waiting for all of the numbers of people that are ready. Like, I think because people are being affected by a lot of different things. So I feel like,
Hmm. Hmm.
if people are ready to start doing some strikes, go do it, you know,
Right.
and have that be a model of, encouraging that in different sectors. And part of, and then that's part of somebody, I think maybe from 5051 the other day, was talking about in a town hall meeting kind of thing, was saying in DC, was saying, we need a constellation, you know, of
Yes.
different organizations doing different things, different people doing different things. I think, to me, that would be, I like that idea of a constellation, and I think that would be a good contribution to that constellation.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and luckily people have been striking more and more over the last 2 and 3 years, and we see mostly, successful wins happening. We had the writer's strike, which was one of the earlier ones I'm thinking of. We had the latest being the sanitation workers strike in Philly. I mean, gosh, oh my God, if we want to talk strategy, we wouldn't even have to focus on anyone else. If we could get every single trash collector in this country to go on strike, it would be a done deal. And so I think there are real ways that we can be, very pointed, very strategic, and reach out to the right people and make this happen. But I also think this is the first step, right? Our organizations coming together and meeting each other, talking it out and saying, okay, we might not agree on everything, but we all agree that fascists have got to go. How do we make that happen?
Yeah, and not a, and fascists have to go, and the actual this regime has to go, because it's not fascists in the abstract. It's fascists in power right now that are turning this into a fascist society that we have to stop, like, before it's too late. And it's not even really appropriate to say before it's too late, because we're already there. That has to stop now.
Right.
And not kind of some idea of, well, we have time. We have time to do this, we have time to do that. We'll see what happens in 2026 elections. Like, that is an eternity from now.
Yeah.
And it is, and it's a deadly illusion and delusion to think that that's going to be how we deal with what's happening in the society right now. And I think with the takeover of DC that just happened yesterday, I think that may be starting to get more apparent to people who maybe have not seen it before. And I think right now everybody has to confront it for what it is, you know, and act now.
Hmm. Right.
And that's what I would say about, when you said earlier that, all the organizations should come together and talk to each other. I think all the organizations should do whatever they want to do right now to stop Trump fascism.
Yes.
And if they want to talk to each other, fine. If they don't, fine. But act on this. This has to stop, and we have to, have all the different ways that we're actually, you know that we're shutting this down, that we're stopping their ability to carry out this fascism, and where that understanding that it has to get out now and we have to get it out now
Hmm.
is growing.
Right. Yeah. How can we disrupt the regime's lives, the politicians' lives directly enough that they can't ignore it, that they actually cannot continue with their day-to-day functions unless they come around, unless they, you know, start listening to the demands and putting those things into action.
I mean, it's interesting when I mean we've talked in Refuse Fascism a lot about the example of the protests, the George Floyd protests in 2020,
Hmm.
because that was something like 20 million people who came out into the streets for, and I mean I was in LA at the time, it was for weeks. At least there it was for weeks. I don't know what it looked like across the country, but at least a couple of weeks, there was, millions and millions of people coming out into the streets. And
Yeah.
one of the things that that did was it affected what everybody was thinking. Everybody had to like have their thinking challenged by it, and we have a country divided in two. So you have the fascists, like people who, white supremacists, like we want our country back, people who hated it and wanted it to stop and were doing things to try to stop it. But then you had a lot of people who had just never even thought about this before, about like, and saw the murder of George Floyd in front of their eyes and were like horrified.
Right.
And that, but then when people acted on it and they acted together, it brought the reality of this to people in a whole different way. And I remember, the videos of like the TikToks of kids like challenging their parents and all of all of this stuff was in motion. Like you don't get that if people don't act
Hmm.
together. That's what happens when people act together. You change the whole atmosphere in society. And what it meant at that time for the people in power was they had to at least pretend to care about this. They
Yeah.
had to, and Nancy Pelosi was in the Capitol taking a knee, to like,
Oh, wow. I forgot about that.
no, you know what I mean? And it's not, it's not because like the Democratic Party, like, is some institution that that wants to stop police murdering black and brown people as in, the the
Oh, yeah. The Democrats are very pro-police
situation.
for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, the situation in society meant that like that it affected every institution. Everything had to respond to it.
Hmm.
And then but then it didn't, then it went into a direction that kind of derailed it, right? Went
Right.
into like a defund the police, and they said, oh sure, we'll defund the police, until actually, oh no, we're not going to do that, we're going to refund them and fund them more. And it got, it went off. And if you have a fight where the demand is stays in focus of the regime must go and we're not getting out of this, out of these streets until it's gone, and that's what it looks like in the society, that's when the politicians will do something different. It's not
Mm.
just because of how they're personally affected, or or each one teach one and how they personally think. They're making calculated decisions about running a society that has a position in the world. And if that society cannot function because the populace is in upheaval demanding the regime must go, then they have to make decisions. Do you double down and stick with that regime's program, or do you jettison it?
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
there's different ways that that can be jettisoned. At that point, that could be where all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, actually we can bring forward an impeachment that could go through, or it looks like the there's different mechanisms by which that could happen at that point, where whether impeachment, whether the key players are forced to resign, which seems very unlikely, but you don't know, if there's a situation where there's that kind of cracks and that kind of pressure,
Hmm.
then you could see something coming out of Congress or whatever, that's even a new pathway of like, oh well, considering the whole, all of these key players in the whole regime have all been violating the Constitution, actually they can all be brought up on charges or they can all be removed, like we don't know exactly what that mechanism looks like in the moment, but it's with that kind of crisis in society that you can have that kind of a major change where they jettison the program instead of, trying to just like how many politicians can we convince when the atmosphere right now is that the fascism has all the initiative. We have to take the political initiative.
Yeah. I want to go back for 1 second. I agree. We do have to take the initiative. I want to go back and say, I don't think the Black Lives Matter protests were sort of derailed by messaging. I think the messaging was actually pretty on point, and the whole defund the police thing was pretty coordinated. I just think that the jaws of white supremacy were just too strong, and they just, it's like they're not going to go easily, right? It just bit back, and it resulted in this backlash and all these new cop city training facilities. I mean, Maryland spent what, $800 million on a cop city after Black Lives Matter. So we're up against some real intense forces here. And yeah, I don't know. I keep coming back to be honest, when people say join the movement however you feel called, I'm sitting here going, okay, great, but that's not going to work unless we have a general strike because that's the only, I mean, or violence, right? Mass violence. But everyone seems very committed to calling themselves a nonviolent mass movement, which is great. That's awesome. Go be a nonviolent mass movement. But then come endorse general strike because that's the only thing that will get, enough people, like you said, to reach a tipping point um where there's a, how did you put it? Like there's enough of a um enough people participating so that the regime has to make the choice. They can't continue as they want to right now. So my call to action for people is sign your strike card and then get 10 to 20 of your friends to sign your strike card whenever you feel hopeless and whenever you get scared, because the more people that are actually already doing the work that we bring into this conversation, the more refined our strategies will become. That's my pitch. Have you signed a strike card, Lucia?
I have not signed a strike card, and I think, but I'm in favor of people, taking up the general strike. I'm in favor of, of people participating in that way. I think the point I was making earlier about like it needs, people need to act now is what I'm very concerned about because I think if we just wait for, okay, once we have enough people, then we go, I think it will be too late. I think
Hmm. Yeah.
and I think it will not, I don't even think we'll get there because that's, part of my point about like what changes when people start to act and how that affects other people and their thinking. It's when it's when there starts to be a resistance that's catching hold that then you could go from, 10,000 people saying they want to do something to a million people saying they want to do something,
Yes.
because there's a different vibe, if you want to put it that way, in society. There's a different atmosphere being created where people are standing up. But right now, that's not that we don't have that climate yet, and it's very bad. It has to
Uh-huh.
change. And if it's just sign a strike card and then we'll get there when we get there, I think we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it as a society. Like we're not there. We're going to be crushed before that can happen. And so, so I'm in favor of people doing a general strike, but I think it has to be combined with right now, like all the ways in which people are acting, either, like I said, striking now or protesting and sign a strike card, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's got to be where we're kicking, kicking up into being a different kind of climate right now, that people feel like we're a resistance people. We're standing up, and we're not, and not kind of like everybody's afraid, everybody's passive, everybody's like, well, we'll do something eventually, while it
Hmm.
all gets harder. Every day is going to get harder for people to be willing to risk something.
Yeah.
And it's really, the time is now.
I appreciate you laying it out like that. I feel like that helps me understand where the thinking is coming from because you're right. we don't want to do nothing. We don't want to say just sign your strike card and then just wait, right? You can just sit at home, wait for months and months while we get 12 million signatures and then okay, now we're ready to go. We
Mhm.
we definitely don't want to put out that message. We want to be telling people come find us, sign your strike card and directly plug into mutual aid and direct organizing, right? I tell people all the time, general strike does not have to take up hours and hours of your week. It can be a method for finding people who are already doing the work on the ground and the people who are going out and reaching the community. I've used it to find people who are canvassing for other things. And I say, oh my gosh, this is great. I want to come canvass for what you're marching for, right? I want to come support your right for public workers to strike, things like that. Can I also pass out my general strike information? And they say, oh my gosh, of course. Because, we keep coming back to it, but we're all working toward the same thing in the end is this better society where people are actually treated equally and can thrive and are not, under the thumb of fascism. So I thank you for I feel like my brain finally caught up to if people are thinking we're saying, hey, let's just wait around and, we're not going to do anything except sign our strike cards, that's definitely not the message we want to be putting out. And I think you're so right. It's got to be both. Please, it's got to be march and sign your strike card. And more importantly, calling other people in. I think, that's another thing we keep coming back to this hour is people need an example. They need to see other people taking action and letting them know whether it's banging pots and pans or whistles or whatever. Hey, come help, I need you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this was so invigorating to talk strategy. I feel like we just need, yeah, all the town halls, all the meetings. I want to come meet everyone. Okay, well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the interview, and I really appreciate the discussion, and I really enjoyed it, and I really think it's important. So thank you so much.
Yeah, same to you. Thank you for all the work you're doing. It's so vital, so important.
You too.
And I'll hope to meet you in person soon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks so much,
You
Lucia.
too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Imperfect Strike is recorded and edited by Alice and Maeve. To learn more about the General Strike or to sign your strike card, please go to generalstrikeus.com.